we're seeing an unprecedented number of decision points that an organization needs to make when it comes to going on the AI journey. Because it isn't just a case of going to an AI and saying, that's all I need. It does depend whether or not you'll start to using generative AI techniques or AI techniques, because they actually do different things. And in selecting this safari that we live in, it actually becomes so complex that people are actually deferring decisions about the technology space.
Is the constant noise around AI overwhelming your organization? For many leaders, the sheer volume of hype, trends, and conflicting advice has led to a state of paralysis, where the fear of making the wrong move stops them from making any move at all. Welcome to the Anaya Algorithm, the podcast for leaders who want to build a future intentionally. I'm your host, Magdalene Amagashti, CEO of Anaya Group. Today, we are cutting through that noise with a true industry pragmatist, Matt Armstrong-Barnes. Matt has a clear-eyed view of why so many companies are stuck, and he is here to offer a way out. In this episode, we diagnose the analysis paralysis plaguing the industry and lay out the practical, essential foundations that provide clarity and enable action. This is your playbook for getting unstuck. Please join me in welcoming Matt Armstrong-Barnes. Welcome, Matt. As a leading voice on AI, you have a unique perspective on both the potential and the pitfalls of this technology. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. So Matt Armstrong-Barnes. So I'm a Servitor Group AI Practice Director. So Servitor, we've been doing digital transformation for 2 decades, and AI is playing a more and more significant role in organizations who want to digitally transform. So I've been in Servitor for 6 months now. Prior to that, I was the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise CTO for AI from 2017. Academically, I'm a computer scientist by background who's moved into the AI space. I'm a conference paper reviewer for Cambridge University, specializing in deep learning and large language models, and really been helping organizations transform in the AI space for about a decade now. So I've got some very strong opinions about how to be successful at going on the journey, things to avoid, and also, there's a significant amount of hype in the industry at the minute, so how to cut through that to actually get the right decisions in the AI space.
Awesome. This is wonderful. I think you're the best person we could have on this show to talk about this very important subject today. So, Matt, you recently shared a powerful observation with me that the sheer noise and hype around AI has become so overwhelming that it's actually stopping many organizations from taking any action at all. So let's start from there. Why do you think this analysis paralysis is happening, and what does it look like inside a company?
Yeah, so I think some of the things I'm seeing is, one is the volume of startups. So we're seeing an unprecedented number of decision points that an organization needs to make when it comes to going on the AI journey. Because it isn't just a case of going to an AI and saying, that's all I need, because you need a tool chain, you need to select the models that you're going to use, or you need to work out if you're going to build models yourself. And it does depend whether or not you'll start to using generative AI techniques or AI techniques, because they actually do different things. And in selecting this safari that we live in, it actually becomes so complex that people are actually deferring decisions about the technology space. Secondly, if we start thinking about how we analyze the data that we have, again, that becomes a complex space. How do we govern it? How do we manage it? How do we make sure that our data is mature enough? Again, are complex decisions that we have to make, meaning it becomes easier to actually not do anything in the AI world. And what I'm finding and what we're finding in Servitor is the organizations who aren't going in the AI journey now are starting to be left behind. So having a proper strategy in place that helps you navigate through all of the various tooling choices that you've got to make, help you identify the right algorithms that are going to drive you benefits, and ultimately getting yourself set up. How are you going to be organizationally structured? How are you going to bring this technology in the right kind of way? How are you going to do that in a sustainable, manageable, supportable way that ultimately is going to drive you business benefits and give you that key market differentiation that we're seeing other organizations get? Because unless you start on the AI journey, you're never going to get there.
Wow, that's actually a brilliant diagnosis. It's a paradox, right? The more information that's available, the harder it is to make a decision. At Anaya Group, we see this as leaders being trapped in a cycle of indecision. They know they need to do something, but the fear of making the wrong decision or the wrong choice is a noisy landscape. It's paralyzing.
And I do find some of the challenges we face a lack of executive level understanding around what AI is. If
Yeah.
we look at lots of training courses, they're focused here you go, here's how you program it in Python. Well, actually, we need to move away from that and have executives who understand what you can do with the technology. So if I give you a very simple definition, artificial intelligence is around using algorithmically driven techniques to find hidden patterns in data. Generative AI is around the creation of digital assets. So they're actually doing different things. And all the time, I find organizations who are just talking about AI. And when you talk to them about what they want to achieve, they're talking about generative AI use cases. Or you'll find other organizations that are talking about AI use cases. There is an overlap and they sit on the same fundamental underlying platforms, but really you need to start thinking about not the tool that you're going to use to complete the job, but what it is you're trying to achieve. So stop thinking about using AI and Gen AI. Start thinking about what problems do I want to solve? Have a toolkit in front of you that includes AI and Gen AI. And if they are appropriate tools to tackle the right problem, you'll absolutely be on to getting some success. But because executives don't necessarily fully understand what these tools can do, they're throwing the wrong problems at the wrong technology and as a result aren't getting the success they need. And we saw that with the recent MIT report that said, 95% of generative AI projects fail to realize the business benefits. And that's because executives don't know what they're after and they never actually worked out what the business benefit was going to be before they went on the projects. So yes, what a surprise. They didn't achieve all of the
Yeah.
outcomes they thought they were going to. So make sure you start with a problem and choose the right tool to tackle that problem.
Awesome. That's really good. So, for a leader listening, what are the symptoms of this? Is it endless meetings, a constant stream of pilot projects that go nowhere, or something else? How can a leader actually recognize that their organization is stuck and we're still on the symptoms of, the hyper-driven paralysis?
It, so having worked in the IT industry for more than a couple of decades, maybe three, maybe more, what we historically did was we started off with this thing called a business case, which is we said we're going to spend some money. Why are we going to spend that money? How are we going to work out whether or not we're going to get any value from it? And ultimately, what are we going to achieve and how are we going to track that benefit? Lots of AI and Gen AI initiatives have jumped past that phase and just got allocated money. So,
Yeah.
of course, we ended up creating wonderful initiatives that use this great technology. We deployed them and either they didn't achieve what we thought they were going to do, nobody really uses them, or everyone thinks they're great, but we don't actually know whether or not they're improving efficiency. Whenever I talk about AI initiatives, I talk about three things. I say, if you want to work out whether or not something is going to add you value, you have to be able to measure it. If you're going to measure it, you have to make it repeatable. And if you're going to make it repeatable, you have to make it automatable. And that means that you need a proper life cycle associated with how you drive AI and Gen AI initiatives, because you want to get that measurability so you can track that back to the original business case around why you did this thing in the first place.
Wow. So, what you said actually just shows that, they need a framework to cut through the noise, right? Um, Either a business case or a very clear data and AI strategy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we at Servitor do very frequently is we engage with organizations. We do some engagement around maturity. So some
Yes.
organizations will have differing levels of maturity around how they can embrace this technology. Then we work around, right, okay, what are you trying to do? And it isn't about use cases. So I'm not a fan of the use case driven approach. I'll explain
Yes.
why. You can buy the best use case that you can possibly find, unless you have the data to put into it that's structured in the right way, has the right variety, has the right velocity, has the right veracity, is in the right locations with the right management around it. You can't do that use case. So if anyone comes to try and sell you a use case, it's because they're selling you a use case. They're not selling you an AI. They're not tackling a problem using AI.
Yeah. And it's true, right? Because I believe that you need to be thinking about building the foundational capability, right? It's not just taking something in isolation and only looking at one solution, building it, and then it sits on its own. You want to have a strong bedrock to build on.
And you mentioned a great point as well, integration.
Yeah.
If you're going to take this thing, you're going to integrate it into a collection of existing business processes in order to make it function. Now, AI is an absolutely transformative technology. And if you do build it in the right kind of way, it will give you clear market differentiation. However, AI is probabilistic, which means that there is a probability that it's going to get it wrong. You need to understand that to understand whether or not you're willing to take the level of risk associated with deploying AI into your organization. Because, so you could say, well, HLP, human level performance, if I get an AI that outperforms humans, so it's going to perform better than the average person executing that business process, then it's a fit. Where the challenge comes is the fact that AIs can do it at significantly greater speed and scale. So if it is going to get it wrong, it's going to get it wrong at a greater speed and scale, which means it becomes increasingly important to make sure that you've got the right data that you're using with these algorithms to give you a very high degree of confidence that the level of error is low. And when you are having errors, you've wrapped it in the right technology stacks that can spot those errors, feed that back into the process to allow you to correct them. Again, all of these sort of characteristics have lived in the software engineering world for a long time, and I see lots of AI initiatives that are skipping some of these software engineering disciplines that we've used to successfully build massive scale systems for decades. So let's take some of that rigor that we applied historically in the software engineering world and put that into the AI space. And as a result, we'll end up with significantly higher degrees of success, and we'll understand where we're not getting that success and can take corrective action.
I love the way you mentioned, AI is probabilistic and how you elaborated on it to show the clear role a human being plays in ensuring that AI is giving us the right solution, the right impact, and not missing the opportunity to pick up on errors quicker, right? Rather than just leaving it to its, trusting it too much and assuming that it's like the all in all magic bullet.
Yeah, very much so. I see
Yeah.
organizations. At Servitor, we're working with organizations to put them in. So we work right across the spectrum, whether or not
Yeah.
you're absolutely getting going on your AI journey, whether or not you've got sort of proof of concepts and you're looking to scale those into production, or whether or not you've got scalable AI deployments. Absolutely, at Servitor, we work across the spectrum of all of those different type of initiatives to help you get to that next level and make sure that you're putting it in the right kind of way. Because come back to the MIT report,
Yeah.
95% of generative AI initiatives fail to achieve the business benefits. Bringing in an expert organization like Servitor who can help you go through that transformation is a 2 times multiplier for success. So, we're seeing absolutely that. I have a couple of great phrases. One of which I believe originates in Afrikaans, but I could be wrong. And it's been used by politicians around the world. So it's a very famous phrase, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. And AI is absolutely a team sport. So it's all about
Yeah.
going together, bringing in the right level of experts, the right domain expertise, the right problems, and you'll absolutely have success. Pushing too much emphasis just onto the data scientist to fix all of these problems does
Yeah.
not set you up in the right kind of way.
I just love that. Thank you for sharing. So back to, the foundation as a filter. We talked about the noise, right? The noise is causing paralysis, and it seems the real foundations you talk about are actually the solution. So, how do these foundations, whether it's data quality, team skills, or governance, act as a filter to help leaders ignore the noise and actually focus on what truly matters?
Yeah, so at Servitor, we're an engineering organization. We build systems. That's kind of what we do. We do digital transformation and we run complex programs. And really, you need to start thinking about how you separate out what you're trying to do in the AI space. So you need to start thinking at a more business level. How do you organizationally structure yourself? How do you govern this thing? How do you build strategy? But you also need to start thinking about, well, if I'm working on those areas, how do I look at the data that I have? And how do I get a good enough understanding of the granularity of the data in order to support AI initiatives? So you then need to start thinking about, what AI initiatives can I run? And separately, what generative AI initiatives can I run? And underpinning all of that, you've got 2 more things you need to think about. One is the tech stack. And I'll loop back to why tech stacks are so important in a second. And the last one is the people stream. How do I do education? How do I make people understand the implications of bringing this in? Because there are pretty significant organizational ones. If you start bringing AI into your back office, which is where we're seeing most of the benefits realization. The tech stream, why that's really important. At Servitor, we work with organizations and they've kicked off they've chosen use cases. So they've said, I've got 5 use cases I want to do. And they've allocated funding to each one of those individual use cases. So what is in that funding? Each use case builds its own tech stack. We know AI tech stacks are expensive to procure and they're expensive to run. So suddenly I've got 5 expensive tech stacks that I am now bringing into my operational run cost, meaning my AI initiatives have now become very expensive because I didn't take a strategic view and make some key decisions at a foundational level about common tech stacks. Once we start to bring in these things into our technology stream, we can make some absolutely valid decisions about how we're going to embrace this technology. And if we get our foundations right, how we're structured, our strategy, which use cases we're going after based on the data that we have, and how we're going to underpin that from a technology perspective and make everybody in the organization aware of what we're trying to do, that sets you up for success. And then you need an executable plan that underpins that to drive these initiatives home. That's how you get yourself set up and get going on the AI journey.
Love it. So essentially, the foundations aren't just about building, they are also about creating clarity across the business.
Yeah, very, 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 very much so. There is so much myth and conjecture in the space. There's so much confusion about what you can actually do with this, and in a way that is sustainable, ethical, and considers your organizational values, and also things like that I find sometimes are considered too late in the AI life cycle. How are you going to manage security? How are you going to manage risk? How are you going to make sure that you bring it in a way that is compliant with the regulations that exist in your organization. That landscape starts to get more complex as we start to consider things like the EU AI Act, the Biden-Harris administration, when they released some safety executive orders. Obviously, the Trump administration is changing some of that in the US. So there's quite a significant changing landscape in terms of regulation that lives in this space. So depending on where you're deploying it, you need to consider some of those aspects as well.
Love it. Thank you. That's incredibly empowering. So, for that leader who feels overwhelmed and stuck, what is the first tangible step they can take to break the cycle of inaction and start laying one of their foundational stones?
So I would say get an AI initiative going, work out who's going to be in that team, and then as so I'm an engineer, but by background, what do I do? Well, I could create an action plan. I create a number of activities that need to happen, and I turn that into plans that then work out what you're actually going to do in the space. Once you've done that, you can track against where you're going from an execution perspective. You can wrap some KPIs around it. You can work out by building squads of people, virtual teams that are going to start thinking about the problems they need to address. Then you can take them to some central functions to work out if these are AI problems. If they are AI problems, then you can kick off activities to go away and actually work out what data that you've got to support them. So it is all about building it programmatically. So move out of the let's have a meeting about it to, well, actually, what's the plan? Normally, you'll derive a plan from a bit of a strategy. So at Servitor, we work with organizations on building their AI strategies. We also work with them on how to turn that into an executable plan. Once you've got that, you create your milestones and you start delivering against what you're trying to achieve. If we don't have that, we have this analysis paralysis where we spend all our time thinking. So I've worked with one organization. They told me they've got 200 use cases.
Whoa.
Awesome. That sounds great. Have you got any data that's going to support any of those use cases? Oh, no, what do we need data for? And they'd engaged with an organization who take them through an ideation phase. So I call it an ideation utopia, which is let's spend time at a whiteboard thinking about all of the things that AI could do for me. And the answer is you'll end up with 200. When you actually go, what problems am I trying to solve? When it comes to solving those problems, if I solve them, what benefit do I derive? They're an AI project. I turn that into an AI program. You're not going to run 200 because trying to run 200 AI initiatives is impractical. You're going to pick the ones that give you the highest benefit because you've done some benefits realization that builds you a business case. So going through some standard things that we've been doing in the software world, normally if you're going to do something, you'd build a business case. You'd work out what benefit you were going to derive from it. You'd have a rough idea as to how long it was going to take, who needed to be involved, how you were going to govern it, how you were going to manage it, and then you go in and do it. Because AI's seems to somehow not jump the hurdle, but go round it to the next phase, gets allocated some budget, we're missing out on these foundational principles that have lived in organizations for decades.
I love that. That's fantastic. And I love the actionable advice you've shared. And it's so important. I completely resonate with you on the need to have a clear strategy, actionable with, a clear implementation plan with milestones and, focusing on one high impact area at a time. So defining those high value use cases and then, of course, starting small, start with one small intentional act. Definitely agree with you on that.
So I like my phrases, by the way. So there's another one which always resonates with me, which is you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Nice.
AI absolutely falls into that category. Don't pick the biggest, hardest thing that you can possibly do that's going to give you the maximum business benefit, because it'll be hard. It'll take you a lot longer than you thought it was going to be. Pick something that gives you a quick win. We all call it low-hanging fruit, but a quick win, something that everyone can come away feeling enthusiastic about. They've deployed a successful AI or Gen AI implementation. They've got some business benefit. They've encountered some problems, because you always do whenever you try and implement any form of change. You've overcome them. Everyone pats themselves on the back, And then you can pick something that's bigger and more complicated. So yes, again, these are principles that we come with us from the software world, where you wouldn't pick the biggest, most complicated thing. You'd sort of generate the processes, run through them, get some successes, and then increase the complexity of what you're trying to do. So
Completely
absolutely
agree.
start with that approach. This, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, is incredibly true in the AI world, because one failure and everyone goes, it doesn't work in my organization, we can't do it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's actually really true. And again, putting a bit of that responsibility on the leader, because the leader drives the clarity. It suggests to me that a new role for the leader in the AI era is not just as a strategist, but as the chief clarity officer. How does a leader provide that clarity and psychological safety for their team when the outside world is so noisy and chaotic?
So I, for one, probably as you can tell, I use metaphors and stories all the time to try and explain, because AI is a very complex discipline. You know, when you start, if from a leadership perspective, if you start to jump into it in 2 minutes, there's a level of depth in AI that you don't need to go into. You need to understand what it can do, not really how it does it. So that's what you need people like me for. You know, yes, I can explain the maths to you. Do you need to know that? Probably not. But you need to work out, when you're looking at tackling a business problem, whether or not it's an AI problem. You also need to have a good understanding of your domain knowledge associated with your data. I'll give you another analogy. If you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, throwing more hay on the stack does not make it any easier. In data science terms, this is called the curse of dimensionality, which means I've got too much data and I'm actually trying to find the important stuff in that data that is relevant from an AI perspective. Absolutely true. AI or Gen AI, you need to be putting in your high value data that you've worked out is high value in order for it to be effective. There's two reasons why you need to think about this. Firstly, the organization that's embracing AI, has the greatest understanding of your data. It is probably your most valuable asset. So getting fundamentally to grips with it from a leadership perspective, and not just at a dashboarding level, is absolutely critical. Secondly, processing significant volumes of data is extremely computationally intensive. So reducing that dimensionality down to only what is important reduces not only your costs in terms of the infrastructure you need to buy, the electricity you need to use, the cooling, it's also better for the environment. We need to consider that AI is a incredibly power intensive technology, and anything that every organization that can do to make it more efficient actually is just fundamentally more sustainable. And you know, I think that every organization on the planet should have strong sustainability objectives. You know, it's a key value in Servitor to make sure that we're driving efficiency wherever we can, because we've got some pretty big sustainability objectives.
Awesome. Thank you. That is super helpful. Lots of gold nuggets, wisdom, and to add to it, giving leaders what they need to be able to cut through the noise for their organization. Thank you. So I'm going to go back into the governance, part of the foundational stuff. How can governance be a tool for clarity and action rather than another source of bureaucracy that adds to the paralysis?
Yes. So I think what we've got to view is, right, so I'm going to talk about governance in a couple of ways. One is around organizational structures. So let's start there, because I think they're key when it comes to effective governance. So there are kind of three ways that you can do AI in your organization. Way number one is you say, I'm going to create a central center of excellence, and I'm going to harmonize all of my resources around the organization who work in the AI and data space into one single place. That doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is you pull people away from the key thing they're working with, and that's data. And business problems. And you have a tendency to create this kind of ivory tower thinking, which is an organization that thinks about the problems it's trying to address without actually working out if those are the problems that you should really be working on, because you have this sort of disconnection between the two. What we then need to think about is, if creating a centralized center of excellence doesn't work, then perhaps I should just leave everybody in the business close to the data to continue to where they're going to work. That also doesn't work. Why? Because we end up with this individual use case where we have lots and lots of use cases that are created, lots of AIs and Gen AIs that are deployed, and it becomes an unmanageable mess. The happy compromise between the two is some centralized governance and some centralized functions that work with the disaggregated producers of AI systems who are working out in the business. So think about ethics and compliance, think about regulatory compliance, think about shared best practice, think about the common technology stacks that you want to run, and think about how you effectively marshal resources, which we know are limited in this space. Those become much more governance oriented in a positive way, because people can come to a shared collective and say, I've got an AI, something I think is going to be an AI initiative. It's going to be great. And people can say, well, how are we going to make sure that we've got the right data? How are we going to make sure that we are doing things that are ethical, that are compliant with our organizational values? So me, I'm a mathematician, I'm a data scientist. That's what really gets me excited. And when it comes to working with data, really it all becomes numbers, because what are AIs? They're mathematical equations. So you need to translate it all into numbers anyway. So a lot of the time, some of the core information just becomes about looking at statistical balances. So you lose some of that core understanding of what data is really relevant and whether or not it should be used in certain ways. So in that ways, by having this mode of operandi, we're effectively running AI projects. We're sharing best practice associated with what we're doing. We're making sure that they're ethical and compliant with our organizational boundaries and guidance. And we're marshalling our resources incredibly effectively, as well as running them in a programmatic way that gives us the highest degrees of success. Because there are lots of common frameworks and techniques that you can use that really help in terms of going on this journey.
That's a great point. Thank you. It's really reframes governance from a complex set of rules to a simple, elegant decision-making framework. So good governance should make it easier to make good decisions quickly, not harder.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you. So before I go to the final question, I know we had a very interesting conversation before we started the recording, and I think it's worth bringing it back. And that was around the hype on AI and being fooled, in my view, by people who get hold of the latest toy in the name of AI, and suddenly they are branding themselves as AI experts and misguiding, I would say, in a gentle way, the wider society. My concerns as a data expert, someone who's worked in data for 15 odd years, is we're putting ourselves in a really dangerous space where even when we talk about the errors or the ethical flaws we have in our society, it's all being put into that AI solution, because there's no real governance, there's no real accountability. It's just someone who really doesn't know the data claiming to be an AI expert and giving people access to tools that has not been really built on a good foundation. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we face is lots of people don't understand the difference between IT and computer science. They're actually two very, very different disciplines. So if I explain, IT is the usage and maintenance of computing systems. Computer science is the design and creation of computing systems. And that's created a fundamental problem in our industry, which is we're getting IT people to build computer systems, when really we should be getting computer scientists to build computer systems. And that's become even worse in the AI space, because we've now got people who don't come through the fundamental computer science route, with the relevant experience and understanding of how you build systems effectively, we're using either non-computer scientists altogether, or we're using IT people to try and bridge that gap. Because there is a skills challenge. And when I was a chapter ambassador, an inaugural chapter ambassador for the AI Summit London 2015. And when I was asked why I wanted to become one, I said, well, I think the people who've worked in the AI and data space for a long time have a responsibility to help grow the skills that are in the space, but in the right way. So instead of people rushing into this incredibly large and complex discipline, we need people providing mentorship and guidance to make sure they're bringing the right skills and have the right understanding of how to do it. And I think that's the problem, is everybody, well, I speak to so many AI experts now, and trying to find true AI experts, unless you are one, is really complicated. So if you're a leader in an organization and you're engaging with what you think is an AI expert, unless you know the questions to ask them and whether or not they're giving you the right answers, you're going to really struggle to attract the right talent into your organization. And we then have retention problems, because if we get leaders who come in who don't fundamentally understand the space, they're going to recruit more people who don't understand the space, which creates problems. And it is a discipline that's existed for a long period of time. So it's a case of not saying, oh, well done, you're now my AI expert, go away and read a book. It's about having that fundamental foundation that gets you to the point where not only do you understand the technology, you understand how to use it effectively, how to bring it into your organization, and make sure that you're doing that in an ethical, sustainable, repeatable, maintainable, and supportable way.
Nice. I love that. I just love how you put it together. So, to bring it all together, Matt, what is your final piece of advice for a leader who is feeling overwhelmed and wants to finally move from paralysis to purposeful action?
Start with a business problem. Don't think about AI. Don't think about generative AI. Think, what do I want to do? Once you've done that, then work out what technology matches that problem. Most AI initiatives that are successful are normally part of a wider digital transformation. You know, at Servitor, we're digital transformation experts, and we're seeing increasingly that digital transformation has an insight pillar or an innovation, an insight pillar or a data pillar or a knowledge pillar. And that fundamentally is how we link to AI initiatives, because we start thinking about, how do I want to more effectively use my data? How do I more effectively want to use my knowledge? How do I want to more effectively use all of those things in a way that I can have a conversational relationship with them? And once I've done that, turn it into a pragmatic, programmatic approach that drives you towards getting that benefit.
Nice. Thank you so much, Matt. That is the perfect, empowering advice to end on. Thank you for bringing such clarity to an overwhelming topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having you. I've very much enjoyed our chat.
I look forward to having you back on this show, because I can tell there's so much more that we could benefit from.
Definitely. Having worked in this space for a decade, I got incredibly strong opinions about how to be successful at going on the AI journey. So, and I work regularly with Servitor and Servitor's clients, organizations, to help make sure that they can be successful, because it's a complex discipline. Getting the right foundations and steps in place is critical. And once you've done that, executing against use cases actually becomes fairly trivial, because you've got the right mechanisms to identify them, to govern them, to plan them, to deliver them, and make sure that you've got the operational excellence wrapped around it to support them long term in your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, what a necessary and grounding conversation with Matt. My key takeaway is that in an age of overwhelm, a leader's most important role is to be the chief clarity officer. Building a strong foundation isn't just a technical exercise, it's actually an act of leadership that gives you and your entire organization the confidence to ignore the noise and take purposeful action. To connect with Matt, please visit our show notes. And if you are a leader looking to cut through the noise and build your own intentional foundation, you can learn more about our frameworks at Anaya Group by visiting anaya.org. Until next time, keep leading intentionally. Thank you.